Timber! On the village green at Wellsworth, there stood an enormous elm tree. One autumn night a great gale blew and broke off one of the branches, which crashed heavily to the ground. No one was hurt, but there was an awful mess. Next day men came and inspected the tree. They measured this and that, and made important-looking notes in their pads, nodding and looking serious. "It's not safe," they said to each other. "It'll have to come down." A day was fixed, and it happened that on the same day Jem, Cole and Trevor were working in the vicarage garden, cutting a supply of logs to last the vicar through the winter. Trevor is an old green traction engine. Some years ago Edward helped to save him from the scrapyard, persuaded the vicar to buy him, and now Trevor lives in the vicarage orchard. In winter he saws logs for the vicarage fire, and in summer gives children rides whenever he's asked to do so. Jem Cole, his driver, is always glad when the vicar says there's work for Trevor. "Trevor and me makes a good partnership," he said. Trevor and Jem had been busy all morning, and a great pile of cut logs showed they'd almost finished. Suddenly they heard a shout from the gate. Jem carefully stopped the saw and went to find out what was the matter. He came back with a great grin across his face. "The tree on the green's broken down," he said, "and they want to borrow you, Trevor, my lad. I'd better go and find the reverends." He hurried away. The vicar was delighted to let Trevor help. "I wish I could come too, and my sermon would never get finished if I do," he said. The green wasn't far away, and soon Trevor and Jem had reached the crowd waiting for them. Jem drove Trevor into position and made his saw ready, a bigger one this time. Then he pulled the lever, and Trevor chuffed happily. The old tree trunk was thick, and it took some while to cut through it, but at last the tree cracked, leaned a little way, and stopped. Jem stretched out a brawny arm and pushed it very gently. "Timber!" shouted someone. The great elm tree leaned further and further until with a crack and a roar it toppled to the ground. The breeze flew in all directions, and a great cloud of rooks, croaking crossly at being disturbed, rose from the tree nearby and drifted about in the air like pieces of burnt paper. Trevor and Jem spent all next day cutting the fallen giant into smaller lengths and dragging them close to the road where a lorry could collect them. Then at last, the job well done. Trevor chuffed happily to his place in the vicarage orchard. "I enjoyed that," he said to himself, "just like the old days." And with a happy smile on his face, he fell asleep. In the drink. Trevor the Traction Engine chanted happily along the road. He liked unusual jobs, and this one was the sort that he did not often get the chance to do. A farmer had some old cherry trees which didn't give fruit anymore, and he had decided to plant new ones in their place. He had telephoned Trevor's owner, the vicar of Wellsworth, to ask if Trevor could pull the old trees out of the ground. "Of course he can," replied the vicar. "He'll be delighted." And so, one bright autumn morning, Trevor and his driver, Jem Cole, were making their way to the farmer. They had some distance to go, so they had started early, and now, about halfway there, they stopped to refill Trevor's water tank from a roadside stream. It was near the railway, and while Trevor enjoyed his drink, Edward, whistling cheerfully, passed with his first train of the day. By 10 o'clock they reached the farm, and the farmer took them into his orchard. There were 3 tree stumps to move. The trees, of course, had been felled already. Trevor's driver used a spade to dig round the first stump, making a hole below the main route. Then he pushed chains through the hole, looped them round, and fastened them to the towing bar beneath Trevor's bunker. "Right," he said to Trevor as he pulled the lever. "Heave!" Trevor struggled to move forward, pulling hard. There was a creaking noise from the tree stump, but it didn't move. "Oof!" panted Trevor. "This is a tough one." He tried again. This time he felt the stump moving a little. At the third attempt, there was a sudden crack. The tree stump came out of the ground in a shower of earth and drops. Trevor jerked forward, the chains clanging and bumping behind him. "That's one," said Jem. "Well done, Trevor. Now for number 2. The second stump was no trouble at all, but the third was harder to move than the first stump had been. By the time it was out of the ground, Trevor felt exhausted. But the work had taken longer than expected, and there was not time to rest. The autumn evenings were short, and if Trevor and his driver were to get back that day, they had to set off at once, because he had no lights for anyone on the road. They stopped when they reached the stream. Jem Cole placed the hose in the water and opened the valve. Thankfully, Trevor sucked the cool water into his tank. As the water flowed in, Trevor's tank became heavier. His wheels began to feel unsteady. Suddenly, without warning, the embankment on which he was standing slipped sideways towards the stream. Trevor's right-hand wheel sank with it. "Help!" he gasped. "Look out!" Jem Cole, who'd been watching the hose, jumped clear. "Ooh!" groaned Trevor, and slowly tilted further and further towards the stream. "I wanted a drink, not a bath!" But it did not quite go that far. When the ground stopped moving, Trevor's right-hand wheel was about 2 feet lower than the other one. Quickly, Jem put out Trevor's fire so that his boiler wasn't damaged. Then he let all the water Trevor had just sucked into his tank run away to make Trevor lighter and less likely to slip again. "Now what?" asked Trevor anxiously. "We'll have to be jacked back onto the road," Jem said. "I need a firm platform to work from." Edward's branch line lay just ahead. Men were re-railing the track, and some old sleepers lay on the bank, waiting for Donald to collect them. "What about those sleepers?" Trevor suggested. The foreman of the rail-railing team gave permission, and set some men to help. First they dug into the bank of the stream and placed a sleeper below Trevor's wheel so that he could not slip, and putting the jack on this, slowly raised Trevor, building up both platforms as they did so. At last, Trevor was level again. Jem refilled the boiler water tank and relit his fire. It was too late to get home that night, but there was a farm nearby. Jem went to ask if Trevor could spend the night in the farmyard. By the time he came back, Trevor had just enough steam to move safely off the road. Trevor reached home safely the next day. Now, whenever he goes on a long journey in the future, he's always very careful when he stops for a drink.
First prize. Trevor the Traction Engine was dozing in the vicarage orchard, enjoying the late summer sunshine. His driver arrived with a bucket, cloth and polish. "There is a steam engine rally at the village agricultural show, and I think that you will win the best kept engine competition," he said. When his driver had finished cleaning, Trevor looked splendid, with all his brass glistening in the sunshine. Edward arrived on the line that runs past the bottom of the orchard. "My word, Trevor," Edward commented. "Don't you look marvellous? I'm sure you'll win a prize at the show." Edward was on his way to the station to pick up a trailer full of tables for the fruit and vegetable competitions at the show. He also had to take a trailer containing 2 special passengers. 2 of the farmer's donkeys were going to give rides to the children. "Good luck, Trevor," called Edward as he set off for the station. Not long afterwards, the vicar came running down the orchard to where Trevor and his driver was getting ready for the show. "We need your help, Trevor. Edward has broken down and cannot get to the station to pick up the tables and donkey show," the vicar explained. Trevor chuffed off to the station yard, where he was hooked up to a trailer full of tables. He set off down a narrow, muddy lane that led to the showground to deliver the tables. Trevor then went back to the station yard for the donkeys. But the donkeys did not want to get into the trailer. "Hurry up," pleaded Trevor. "I'll miss the competition if you carry on being so stubborn." Trevor's driver had an idea and hurried off to find some carrots. "These will do the trick," he said, and put the carrots in the trailer. The donkeys saw the carrots and jumped into the trailer straight away. Trevor set off down the muddy lane again and soon reached the showground. He caught sight of his reflection in the water as he passed the boating lake and was horrified. "Oh goodness, I'm covered in mud. I can't enter the competition now," he cried. "Never mind," said his driver. "We can help the donkeys give rides to the children instead." And that's exactly what they did. The next day, back in the orchard, the vicar came to see Trevor and tied a big red rosette with a first in the centre onto his funnel. "This is from the children who think that you are the very best traction engine ever." Trevor was delighted and wore his rosette all day.